EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody. A Monday edition of Birds 365 following a weekend of rookie camp. Johnny Mack was down at the NovaCare complex seeing the new Eagles youngsters, the new rookies, and more than just rookies. There was rookie tryouts. There was a couple veteran tryouts. Johnny Mack, how was your weekend, sir?
It's good. Hope everybody fired up, ready to go for another off-season week. Yeah, we finally got to see some of the rookies in their jerseys. That's about the extent of it. But yeah, so now everybody's got the temporary numbers, at least. As I often say, be careful with those. But it was good to see guys back on the football field, at least. So that's something as we slowly move on into the off season.
Yep, getting into the off season now. But John, I just wanted to give you a chance. Any key takeaways that you saw? Any rookie that stood out to you, or anything that?
Really again, we're only out there for 10, 15 minutes, so we'll get a better indication of that kind of stuff at minicamp, which happens in early June. OTAs start later this month. They'll be on the field a few times. Same thing with those. We only get 10, 15 minutes, so we're only watching guys warm up, quick individual, maybe catch a couple passes, and that's the about the extent of it. And remember, the only quarterback there was Blake Stenstrom, so undrafted rookie on a tryout from Princeton. So this is very, very early in the process, and anybody raving about anybody, just take that with a grain of salt. But you know, the most notable things to me where A.J. Brown was there watching practice. Obviously doesn't have to be. So, you know, he's trying to set a good example. Jordan Mailata as well, trying to help the young guys on the offensive line. So positives from that chemistry connection standpoint that Nick Sirianni always talks about. And I think the Eagles are hyper-focused on, you know, it's intangible because, and that frustrates a lot of people when you can't put numbers on something or things like that. But the Eagles think a big part of their collapse was off the field last year, and they want to make sure they've overcorrected that, if anything. And they want to make sure everybody's, you know, steering in the right direction. And this is a good start towards that, at least.
Yeah, and for anybody that tuned into Friday's edition of Birds 365, I did ask you, do we think any of the veterans will be down there? I know they're obviously not going to suit up and run, but it was good to see. I thought it was great to see A.J. Brown out there watching the receiver drills. And I know I read that Jordan Mailata was sitting on the offensive line meetings, which was pretty good. John, how about some of the veterans? I know you said you were only out there for 15, 20 minutes, but they did bring in several veterans to try out. John Ross was one that we talked about, the wide receiver. Anything stand out to you from their perspective?
No, I mean, just from the fact the Eagles are looking at John Ross and Jakeem Grant, a 9-year veteran, we're in on tryouts. Shaq Quarterman, linebacker, was a veteran guy. He's played about 5 years. Terrell Burgess, defensive back. Those were the veteran guys. Now they're very deep in the secondary now after the draft. So I don't see much of a spot for somebody like Burgess, but they have plenty of bodies at this stage. But you know, obviously, if you look at two of the weaknesses on paper, third wide receiver, linebacker, and they brought in players at that position. Now Grant is a little bit different because he was an all-pro kick returner, so they seem focused, even though they don't admit it, and they're in a wait and see mode when it comes to the new kickoff rules. And there's a little bit of uncertainty. They're sure bringing in a lot of guys with some kickoff return in their background. So I do think they're focused on trying to get somebody. This seems like almost overkill. I don't know. 9-year veteran. Is that really the way you want to go when you have so many young bodies? We'll see how it shakes out. Last year, the Eagles signed one tryout player after rookie minicamp, and it was Charleston Rambo. And nobody probably recognizes that name, which shows
Yeah,
you the
he played with
relevance.
Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I wouldn't get too overhyped about the tryout players, but John Ross is interesting from the fact that he can run, and we mentioned it a little bit last week on the show. Nick Sirianni often brought that up. Jody and I would go back and forth. Jody just would not accept it at all, and the fact that Nick Sirianni values that speed to stretch the field, and clearly they don't have it on paper that over. And why I say that, every NFL receiver is fast, but there's different levels. And Quez was really fast, and they don't have that really fast guy, John Ross. If he's got what he had, which was when he ran a 4.22 and set the record that held up
Right.
to this year at the combine. He's one of those guys that could really run. So the trait interests me more than the player, to be honest. It's been out of the league, wasn't good when he was in the league. But do they need that trait on the roster? They may feel they need it. And the receivers they drafted, Johnny Wilson, big 6'6", 231-pound guy, and Anaya Smith, undersized manufactured touch guy. They're not burners from an NFL perspective.
Yeah, right. They don't serve the same purpose as
No.
somebody like a John Ross or Quez Watkins did.
No. And Johnny Wilson's interesting because he's just immense for a wide receiver.
Yeah, I read your
Immense.
article on Johnny Wilson on SI.com, which was pretty good stuff. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. You're watching Birds 365. I'm Zander Krause. That's my partner, John McMullen, who you're all here to listen and learn from as he attended the rookie camp this weekend for the Eagles. John, any takeaways from their comments or any of the press conferences? I know Nick spoke. He said he likes
Well, I got frozen Zander Krause, so I don't know if people can.
Out.
Yeah, you
Am I
froze
back?
out. You're back now. I never know. By the way, streaming for those people, I never know if I'm frozen. If I'm hardwired as well. I never know if I'm frozen. If you're frozen, which side can't hear the other side. I just know I can't hear you, so I don't know. I don't know if the people can hear me. That's one of the travails and hurdles with streaming. But whoever it was, I couldn't hear you for a second. So please repeat that question.
Do you got me now? It's still
I got you.
Yeah, just about any comments, anything that stood out from their press conferences. I know Nick spoke, and you were waiting to hear from Anaya Smith and others.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, as I mentioned, and it's kind of boring, as I said, when I talked about the collapse last season. And it's interesting to me because I don't think anybody can put their finger on what happened. And that to me has always been a little bit troubling. There's no obvious thing you can point to and say, all right, this is what went wrong. It was a completion of things. And they seem to be thinking, and how he called it, a mentality off season. And he wanted to get a group of sort of tough-minded, high IQ football players in there. And these are all intangible things that, as I said, you can't measure. And that seems to be their theme. Because when things went awry, people couldn't stop the snowball from coming down the hill faster and faster and faster. And how do you do that? Well, generally you have to handle adversity with mental toughness. We talked a lot about the Sixers. I mean, you can talk about MVPs and numbers, and anybody watches that team can't put your finger on it, but you damn well know the other team was mentally tougher. You could see it on a daily basis. And I think that's been the Eagles' sort of mentality off season, is how he called it. Now, you also need good players. You can't get hyper focused on adding character guys and this and that, and red stars is what the Eagles call them. And, last year they had one with Sidney Brown. This year they have 5. Are they overdoing it? This is all the kind of stuff we'll see unfold. Sometimes you need what to be in the field. If they're dominant and angry, no matter how they do it, I'd rather have the talented guys. So it's a tightrope. It's a delicate balance, but the Eagles seem focused on that mentality off season, which is ironic because they're often thought of as this analytically based organization, and they are for the most part, but they're acknowledging some of those intangibles weren't there last year.
Some other things we'll talk about today on Birds 365 to give you a little rundown to our listening audience. We have Jeff Kerr coming up next in the hour number 1 from CBS Sports, weekly contributor to the program, to the network, a great guest and somebody that has a lot of knowledge on the game of football. And then coming up in hour number 2, Les Bowen, former beat reporter for the Eagles, longtime beat reporter, now contributing at PHLY and has his own blog, lesbowensjawn.com. So we'll talk to them. A couple other good, funny things that happened this weekend. I'm sure everybody saw the Tom Brady roast, which was floating all around social media. Some Bill Belichick commentary bringing up Philly, which was interesting. So we'll get into all of that. I want to remind everybody to like the show. We appreciate your viewership and being here. We're trying to get to at least 100 likes during the live show. So drop us a like if you like the show, and if you want to help us reach more Eagles fans, we do appreciate it. John, one more question I want to ask you before we get to a break and get to Jeff Kerr. Eagles sign another Aussie, Laken Vakalahai, 6'5", 318, just 21 years old. Obviously a depth piece with LaRaven Clark going to the IR, which is interesting, an early IR go for LaRaven Clark. But what do you make of that, and what's your first thoughts on another beastie guy coming from Australia, a rugby player?
Yeah, well, lightning generally doesn't strike twice in the same spot, but the Eagles are going down the same direction. Yeah, and you say depth piece. This is a multiple year project. I think people forget that's what Jordan Mailata was. Multiple year prospect. And that's what they're trying to do here. Just find somebody with incredible physical gifts. And they're a complete untouched lump of clay for Jeff Stoutland to work with. That's what Jordan was when he got here. That's going to be the same thing here. Has never played a down of organized football, has had rugby history in Australia. Same thing. Not quite as freaky athletically as Jordan Mailata, but still has everything you would need. Tremendous wingspan, hand size, arm length to be a tackle in this league. And why not? Why not try it again? You saw, and I remember Stoutland talking about Jordan Mailata. I tell this story all the time. When the AAF was going, one of those spring leagues that is now passed, they were talking about trying to become a developmental league for the NFL, which was ludicrous. The NFL wants no part of that, but they were talking about it from their perspective, trying to almost wish it into existence. And it was actually Damo and I were talking to Jeff Stoutland, and Damo asked him about would he ever advocate getting, because at the time Jordan had no live reps, basically hadn't played. Would he consider sending him over to those guys to continue the development, let him play in spring football? And Stoutland was like, I don't want those guys touching him. I don't know who they are. You didn't want anybody teaching him habits that he didn't want. And sometimes when you look at guys who've had, I think that the logical inference, and for the most part, it's true. If you start in high school, if you play at a high level college, you're way ahead of somebody like Jordan Mailata. But there's also a probability you develop some bad habits along the way that they got to get rid of when you get to the NFL level. And sometimes that's harder than building up a guy from square one. That's sort of how Jeff described it. So maybe it works, but I wouldn't count on it. But, everybody's got – that's an NFL rule change. Everybody's got an international player exemption this year. The Eagles signed him to that. Doesn't hurt, extra body. See what happens.
Is that basically a free international roster spot?
Yeah, everybody's got it. Everybody's got the last
happy in the chat.
The last few years, as they started this international pathway program, where Jordan Mailata is obviously the number one success story from it. They would do it by division. 1 year, the NFC West would get an exemption. 1 year, the NFC East, and they would do it by division. Now everybody has one spot that they can use, one extra spot that doesn't count against the roster, whether it's 90-man in the offseason or 53-man. As they whittle it down to the regular season, doesn't count against that spot. And that's this kid is that international player right now.
So it won't have an impact on that. John, I did see Kellen Moore was out there. Still no talk from Kellen Moore. You guys still haven't had a chance to talk to Kellen.
No, last year, same thing happened.
Yeah.
They'll talk at the next cluster of OTAs, which start, I believe, May 20th, May 22nd. Still don't know we're going to be able to get in there for 1 day. That's when Vic and Kellen Moore should talk for the first time, which I don't like. It's kind of silly. Last year there was a better argument from the Eagles' perspective because they were coming off the Super Bowl. They had a short off season. They had very young coordinators that they wanted to get up to speed from a media perspective. Vic and Kellen have been doing it for a long time. They don't need that help. And they didn't have the longer season after being one and done in the playoffs. So it's kind of silly, but hey, they don't want to give them to us. There's not much we can do. They have to give them to us
eventually, right?
Yeah. So, and that's basically the only reason they do.
So we'll be hearing from them hopefully soon. When will that be, John?
May 20th, as I said, May 20th, or I believe it's May 20th, May 22nd, 23rd. So I'm guessing, pure guess, May 22nd will be the day that we are allowed in, and that will be the day that the coordinators talk. Pure speculation.
We'll be waiting to hear from them. We did hear from all the rookies this past week. We'll get to Jeff Kerr coming up next from CBS Sports. Jeff has a great handle on the NFL as a whole and the Philadelphia Eagles. Also knows a lot about our Phillies, who are red hot for any Philly fans in the chat. Philly's playing really well right now. So we'll get to our first timeout. We'll get to Jeff Kerr on the other side of the break. I want to remind everybody in the chat, we appreciate you all, Slagger and Callie and Twiz and BMO, Eagles, Luke. We appreciate you all, Crowley, our man Crowley, who's always in here. We appreciate all you guys. Make sure you like the show. Help us grow as a platform, grow as a network, and grow as a show. We talked about it last week, over 1 million podcast downloads and several million more on YouTube. So we do appreciate all your viewership on Birds 365. It never goes unnoticed. We're going to get to our first timeout now. Jeff Kerr coming up next.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow, to get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody. A Monday edition of Birds 365. We're joined now by Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports. Jeff Kerr, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, guys. Great Monday. Phillies are in first place. Best record in baseball. Yeah, it's a pretty good day.
Yeah, and you're telling me people still want Rob Thompson fired at times.
They do.
You set a record for wins, and nobody's ever happy. What happened to the world?
You know what? You know what the best part about someone like Rob Thompson is? Like, he hears all this stuff too, so it makes it pretty entertaining.
That's probably not a good idea when you set records and you're being that successful. And yeah, it's probably a good idea to drown out the criticism, I would say.
Yeah, he don't care. I'll just say that.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't. But I digress. So Eagles rookie camp, you were there. Exciting to see the guys on the field for the first time, but not much you could see. We're only out there for 15 minutes or so. So I kind of look for themes, Jeff. And, the veteran tryout players, I think, stood out to me from the standpoint of that tells me they're still looking for something. And it tells me they're looking for speed at wide receiver. And obviously they need a linebacker, which should be no surprise to anybody. Even with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And by the way, for the Jersey people, that's the one you can lock in, 54. And maybe you can get your old Trot jerseys. But your themes of rookie camp.
Yeah, John, I actually like how you pointed out the veterans, Jakeem Grant, John Ross. It does seem like they're trying to find a diamond in the rough somewhere, or a guy that's looking to extend his NFL career, try to get some speed there. I agree. I just don't see a lot of speed at the receiver position. Now, again, we're really nitpicking here. You got.
Oh yeah, well, I mean that's all. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
But Nick made so much of Quez Watkins over the years and his speed, and the ability to space the field. And for a lot of people roll their eyes at that kind of stuff, but spacing is a big part of sports. It's a big part of NFL offenses. It's a big part of NBA offenses. That's what people try to do. In football, they try to space out the field and put defenders in conflict. So it may not show up in the box score, but it is meaningful to have somebody that can scare the so-called pop the top on the defense. So, they got to carry him down the field. And if they're carrying him down the field, that opens up things underneath. It does make sense from a logical standpoint.
Yeah, and I think too, if Smith is healthy, and there's Smith, I think that changes a lot of this, because when I'm watching tape of him, I do see that speed they're looking for.
He does look faster on film, but he ran a 4.55, and that ain't good for an NFL receiver. Now, he's also dealing with he called it an ankle. They called it a shin at the combine, whatever it is. He's still trying to come back from that, but yeah, he's not somebody who he's not Tyreek Hill. Let's put it that way. There are few are who could just flat out run past people. So I don't think they have that player, and I think they're still looking for that player. But we are nitpicking. They have great wide receivers. They have an all-pro, and they got another guy who's really good, maybe the best second wide receiver too in the NFL. So, but this is a good team on paper. So what else are we going to do if we don't nitpick?
Well, we can nitpick their lack of attention to linebacker.
Well,
do
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So what do you know about Shaq Quarterman or anything? He's with Jacksonville for 4 years on his rookie deal, the former 4th round pick, but I mean, he's still unsigned. That's not a positive sign, is it? And he's a tryout player at a rookie camp.
Yeah, it's not too keen on that one. You know what? You might as well just go with Ben Van Sumeren at this point and give him a shot.
Yeah, that's an issue. I got a big problem with linebacker. And I keep going back to Peyton Wilson in Pittsburgh because I saw, somebody's great. Everybody's got grades. But, Adam Kaplan, our buddy Adam Kaplan, was saying scouts around the league are raving about the Pittsburgh draft, which doesn't surprise me because I raved about it the day after. And I said, "Oof, that looks good on paper." And Peyton Wilson's a part of that. If he's healthy. And he went 4 spots after the Eagles took Jalix Hunt. You need a linebacker.
And you're redshirting Jalix Hunt essentially this year. Now, Jalix Hunt could be this amazing difference maker, but is he going to be that in 2024?
No, they admit that, by the way. The Eagles admitted that. This is a developmental guy, essentially.
No. We're talking about linebacker too. So a couple of my sources in Tampa Bay, they were asking me about, hey, have you seen Devin White yet? And I said, well, no, we haven't had our portion of that. And they said, well, you might want to know about this. Levante David gives them a lot of information. He put this on record. He said, Devin White can be a little sensitive at times. And I said, okay.
Well, he's taken a lot of hits over the years, criticism-wise, so I get that. And he's going to take some more here. So, I mean, it's worse here than in Tampa. So we'll see if that becomes an issue. But
a lot of Bucs fans like him, though, because it's one of those guys.
Like a good guy. He's a good guy.
He's one of those guys too. It's almost like here. He won them a championship, and he played a big role in that postseason.
Oh, he played a huge role. He was the best player on the team. I tell Zander all the time. It's one of the biggest anomalies I've ever seen. He had such a great run. He dominated defensively against Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes. That was their gauntlet to the Super Bowl. He was unbelievable. And he's never done it before or after. It's weird. It is weird.
He's a big game player. He might be a big game player.
Well, you got to get to the big games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he did it on their run, maybe that's what the Eagles can get. Jeff, any chance, we're speaking of the linebackers, any chance Jeremiah Trotter strikes lightning and has a big rookie campaign and he can step up into that role? Or
he's going to get an opportunity. I know that. I mean, and where we want him to or not, that's going to happen. I'm rooting for the kid just because I like his old man a lot. I've talked to his old man. I like the pick. I like where the pick was. It's just, I'm just worried about they're going to throw him into the fire. You guys remember Macho Harris when he was here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, like
Macho Harris, I believe.
Yeah. I thought he was a fine player in college, and they just didn't have a safety. So they threw him to the Wolves first couple of weeks and was terrible. You never heard from him again. I hope it's not the same with Trotter, but the way the linebacker situations played out here, especially if the Kobe Dean gets hurt, who's to say Jeremiah Trotter is not starting for this team as early as he can?
Boy, he does have a path. I've talked about it, but they Oren Burks, my guess is, he can be serviceable. They do have Ben Van Sumeren, who when thrown to the Wolves last year late in the season, showed that he picked up some things, at least. I don't think they're going to throw him to the Wolves, but they might have to. And if they have to, that's probably going to be a problem. And hopefully
that might mean more bad for the Eagles than it is good for Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Yeah. Hopefully they won't have to. Hopefully Nakobe stays healthy. Devin White is at least competent, and they turn into TJ Edwards and Kaiser White and they never leave the field. That's the hope, but hope is not a strategy, as Howie always says. Speaking of Howie, I got to bring up Saquon Barkley. You love it. Penn State. Howie has been doing the rounds, national rounds. He was on I forget which show, Adam Shine, maybe.
Oh, he was on Adam Shine's show.
Yeah, Adam Shine's show. Sorry, Adam.
Pat McAfee's. He had a good segment on Pat McAfee's show as well.
It was on McAfee. On Adam's show, though, he mentioned, and I've said this, when everybody zigs, sometimes you got to zag. He's mentioned it in the past. Now, with Saquon, he said that again about Saquon. There's always risk in decision, but there's not risk with the talent, he said. And sometimes when everybody's zigging, you got to zag. Howie was one of the ones who made everybody zig. Is this next level stuff, Jeff? He set up the whole league. Oh, no, you got to devalue this position. You got to devalue this position. You got to devalue this position. It's not worth it. And when everybody gets to that point in agreement, he goes the other way. Is he that far ahead of everybody else?
I think he is. I mean, it was funny too that week before Barkley came here. Barkley was interested in coming here, and it was more of, okay, well, are the Eagles interested, because they knew the history of running backs, and then when you start hearing the Eagles are interested, you're like, oh, this could be a thing. And again, it's not like you signed Saquon Barkley to this massive 5-year deal here. It's a 3-year deal, but it's really a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
Right? So you're really paying for 2 prime years of Saquon Barkley's career, and the Eagles are looking at it as, okay, we saw this guy too. Even 1 year, we saw him 3 times a year. This guy is a generational player. Why don't we put to them he is?
Why? Where's the evidence of this? Where's the evidence? Here's
my defense of him. When you play behind the shittiest offensive line I've ever seen in the last, I'll even say this century, you're not going to succeed. And I think he was the sole reason why that team made the divisional round. Everybody says Daniel Jones. I say him.
I'll say this. I think he could be a generational talent. He does not have generational results, which is probably what John's going off of, which I understand. He doesn't have, but as to your point, he played for the New York Giants. They're not world beaters on offense, and they haven't been for a long time.
But John covered Adrian Peterson too. And John saw a generational talent.
That's true.
Yeah. Adrian Peterson is a rookie. Remember, he was, I don't know. He was a top 10 pick. I think he was 7th.
He was 7th.
I'd have to double check. But so he was coming in. He was on a bad team. Minnesota didn't have that pick because of a trade or anything. They earned it. They weren't very good at the time. They didn't have a good offensive line. They had a terrible quarterback situation. His rookie year, 1,341 yards, 5.6 yards per carry, 12 touchdowns. And I got to see that guy. I had a front row seat for that guy. And he won the MVP in an era where you don't win MVPs as running backs, with Christian Ponder as the quarterback. And he averaged 6 yards per carry. Guys, I've never seen teams a team convert 3rd and 8 with a run, with a heavy box. He did it. That's a generational talent.
Well, he was the best run. He was I'm sorry, he was the best player in that '07 draft. When everything was, remember Jake Long went number 1. I think it was, did Chris Long go to, I'm trying to remember the draft, but I kept saying, Adrian Peterson's the best player. Why isn't he going higher? And fell into their lap.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was the 7th pick, so it was still pretty high. But yeah, that was the Jamarcus Russell draft.
That's right. That's right. That was the draft.
So obviously, but Calvin Johnson went number 2. He's already in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, Adrian will be, but has not been eligible yet because he hung around way too long. Joe Thomas is in the Hall of Fame. He was the 3rd pick. Gaines Adams. Remember Gaines Adams?
The Bucks, right?
Yeah, what a disaster. Levi Brown, disaster.
I know Levi Brown well, too.
Penn State guy.
He was a great – I'll tell you what. He was the guy that we didn't think he was going to get drafted high. I was a freshman in college when Levi was a senior, and we didn't think he was going to get drafted as high as he did, but there was something people liked him. I'm like, okay, he's a first-round pick. I don't know if he's 5.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly wasn't. Not the first poor decision by the Arizona Cardinals. Then LaRon Landry went, pretty good player, and Adrian Peterson. Already, that draft has Calvin Johnson, Joe Thomas, Patrick Williams, Darrelle Revis in the Hall of Fame. And Adrian will certainly be there, probably first ballot, not probably, definitely first ballot. But yeah, I mean, watching a guy like I hear all the excuses. I acknowledge all the excuses. I even say that they're good explanations because Saquon has played behind a terrible offensive line with I think Daniel Jones is mediocre. I don't think he's a disaster. Tommy DeVito's a disaster, and that's what he was dealing with last year. Daniel Jones is competent. At least now in the stage of his career. But I've seen guys overcome all that. And if you're that good, as people says, you overcome it. I'm sorry. You just do.
Well, he did have 2,100 yards from scrimmage his rookie year.
Yes. And then he became.
And he got hurt.
Yeah. And he got hurt. And that's what happens. And, even it could be a half a step. It could be a quarter of a step. But he's going to have a chance to prove it this year. So he can tell McMullen's an asshole. McMullen's wrong. I didn't play with that because there are no excuses, Jeff Kerr.
Well, here's where I'll back you up, John. When the Eagles played the Giants in the divisional playoffs 2 years ago, remember in the 4th quarter, Saquon broke a run, and I said, oh, he's gone. And he wasn't gone. He got caught. And I said, Saquon don't get caught. I've watched Saquon his whole life. I know the guy. He just doesn't get caught. He got caught. So I'm like, he lost something. I still think he's a good player. He's not.
I still think he's a good player too, but I think there's this because of where he went in the draft. There's this, and I don't think he's a generational player. I don't.
Here's my biggest concern with Saquon, and it's not talent related. It's how is he going to be used in Philadelphia? It's Kellen Moore's coming into, his first year as an offensive coordinator. He's got weapons all over the place. Jalen Hurts doesn't really throw to running backs out of the backfield. So how is he going to be used here to get the most out of this talent? I think the talent is there. John, I don't even know if you'll disagree with that. Whether he lost a step, I think can be debated, but how are they going to use him? Is it going to be worth the contract there's one football, there's 2 wide receivers who are 1,000+ yard wide receivers. You got a playmaking quarterback. Where's the production going to come from with him at running back? Is it just handing the ball off on first down? Is it, what does that look like? That would be my biggest concern. It's not really talent related with him.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because to me, Saquon's a guy that he needs the ball. He needs to get the ball in space. That's where I think he's the most deadly. But you're right. Zander, he just doesn't throw the ball. Jalen just doesn't throw the ball to running backs that well. He never has. That's why I think part of it was with DeAndre Swift's issues last year. I thought he was going to be this massive 60, 70 catch guy out of the backfield.
30 catches. He had 33 catches last year.
Yeah, in fact, and you know what? You could tell it frustrated DeAndre Swift at times because that's not his game. Being the role he was in, but Saquon can carry a football 20 to 25 times a game if you need him to. But I agree. I think you got to find this guy the ball in space. I mean, when he beat Nolan Smith in that Week 18 game last year, it's like, look, that's the mismatch you want, right? But can Jalen get the ball to him? And I think that's part of the reason why Saquon's here. It's to free up AJ, to free up Devonta, to free up Dallas, to create something that they felt they didn't have last year with DeAndre Swift. That's why. That's where I think he's really going to make his impact going forward.
And he may, and I've talked about it. It's sort of another intangible. I think, people think he's going to get 1,600 yards and 80 catches. I don't think that's happening, but I do think there's an opportunity to impact the game with his presence, as you kind of mentioned, Jeff. But that's the kind of stuff that I always use the word esoteric. That's a little bit esoteric, and people want to see those numbers. I don't think you're going to see those numbers, Jeff, and I don't think, more importantly, you want to see those numbers.
Would you take 1,100 yards, 500 receiving yards out of Saquon? Yeah, I think that's more than fair.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get the 500 receiving yards, and all signs point to the Eagles don't want to give him the ball 25 times a game to run the ball. Jeffrey Lurie wouldn't be happy with that. We all know that. So that's where I struggle with.
Starts with the guy. And for people that watch Eagles Unfiltered, they got to see the Eagles streaming show. They got to see Jeffrey Lurie in the war room. He's pretty invested.
Yes, he is.
Would it bug you guys if your boss was in the war room like he is?
Yeah. But what can you do? It's his team.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
And I mean, it probably doesn't bug Rose, like bug other people.
I'll tell you what, that Cooper DeJean picks, like after watching that unscripted, that looked like a Jeffrey Lurie pick. That Cooper DeJean pick.
I'm still mad over the Cooper DeJean basketball highlights. I'm like, they don't do that man justice. That man can shoot. That man can throw. And we're showing his dunks.
Yeah. But his dunks are so impressive. That's why he's 6'1".
Athleticism, yeah.
He's 6'1", and that's tremendous explosion off the floor. But getting back to Jeffrey, and that was an interesting question, Jeff. Would that bother you? Could you imagine if the Eagles had a young GM and you had that presence? That to me is another example of why Eagles fans should thank their lucky stars that Jeffrey found somebody he likes and is comfortable with. Because if you had a revolving door at GM with this team, like most other teams, and you had a constant, younger, inexperienced presence with that kind of, stamp, that would be difficult. That would be really difficult in my estimation.
I feel like when you have a really good relationship with your boss or an owner, in this case, like Lurie and Roseman, you can look past it. And I've noticed this in Washington too. Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, because they're first-year guys, they're really close. And I asked Quinn, how involved is Josh Harris in all this? And he said, he's kind of letting us do our thing, and we kind of appreciate that. So
he's got 4 different teams he's worried about. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's still worried about where Joel Embiid's healthy for the time for the play, or buying Sixers tickets to Knicks fans. By the way, it didn't keep him out.
Yeah. No, it did not. The Sixers are a mess. Boy, I could do another 2-hour show on the mess that is the Sixers.
Johnny Mack had an epic rant on the Sixers on Friday a couple times.
I heard. By the way, John, you would have enjoyed, as a season ticket holder of the Sixers, my whole row was Knicks fans, and it wasn't a pleasant night for them. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, hey, the Knicks, by the way, I do think I kind of depend, as I rip the Sixers, as Zander says, I don't rip them for the ticket thing. the Knicks have been so god awful for so long. Their fan base was way more excited.
Yeah, that's true. That's good context right there.
Yeah. And Sixers fans have been used to this one and done, two and out at the best being the ceiling. They're kind of tired of seeing the same movie. So those franchises are in different states. One is just
The
fired
Knicks
up
are
to do
what
anything.
the Knicks are what the Sixers fans thought we were in
Yes,
18 and
in
19.
the early part of the Joel Embiid era.
And I told a couple of them on Thursday night when they're like, "Oh, we beat the Sixers." I'm like, "Congrats, I guess." Like,
Yeah, that's not that impressive.
I was like, "Would you win the NBA Finals or something?" They're like, "Oh, you're just better." I'm like, "No, I don't care. That's the difference."
Yeah. So, just I don't want to get, the Sixers think I criticize them too much. So there's some valuable context. I'm defending them. So there you go, Sixers. But getting it back to the Eagles, because that's what we do here. Nick Sirianni got asked the Mekhi Becton question. Would you consider starting him at right guard? Kind of play defense, kind of bend it off. Do you think that's a possibility? Mekhi Becton at right guard.
Jets were trying him there. They wanted to try him there at one point, and I guess they kind of backed off on it. The Eagles have moved tackles to guards before, even pre-Jeff Stoutland. So I'm not against it. I mean, to me, right guard's open. Like, Tyler Steen's locker could be with the starters.
Yeah, but
all they want.
So much emphasis on that. Like, oh, now he's locked in because of his locker. I mean, come on, people.
Jeff, is Becton too big though? Maybe he's not.
Well,
Maybe I don't know.
That's what I worry about.
Jalen Hurts isn't Justin Herbert, right? He's 6'1". He's not the tallest quarterback in the world. That's a big offensive line. Maybe it's not a problem. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But to me, it seems like you have Anaya Smith in the slot.
I thought you were going to go the other way with this. Like, oh, is Mekhi Becton too big to play guard because he's just too big to play guard?
Well, that too. Is he too big to play guard on the inside there? I mean, he might be.
Yeah. Can he make the pulls? Can he make I'll just compare him to a draft pick, Cooper Beebe, for example. Can he move as quick as him? Probably not. So that'd be my concern. But I think he would make Lane Johnson and Cam Jurgens' life a lot easier if he could master it. And I think that's why he's here. I think they're willing to try him at a bunch of different spots. And look, right guard is open. I don't think Tyler Steen has his job on lock by any means.
Yeah, I don't either.
No. And by the way, there should be competition. The only question is, where does it come from? And I think there will be competition. It might come from Matt Hennessy. It might come from Mekhi Becton. Might even come from Keegan, unlikely, but you can't just hand the job to Tyler Steen. I think that would be silly. And even people go back to last year with Cam Jurgens and, Nick not saying he was the starter for a very long time, but that wasn't really a competition. I mean, he took every first team rep, but he still wouldn't admit it. Here, I think you're going to see other players get first team reps at some point in training camp. I do believe that. I don't think it's just going to be day one, Tyler Steen, nobody else pushing. But I do think it will get the first rep at right guard, though. I do think.
I was asked this week, is James Bradbury's locker stuff by Darius? I'm like, how would I know that? And one, who cares? Like, you know what? To me, is what I tell fans all the time. James Bradbury is a starter and is on this roster until he's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make you make a prediction, though, Jeff. Speaking of James Bradbury.
Yeah, here we go.
do you think he's going to be here? I mean, if you're the GM of this team, are you keeping him here? You just drafted 2 defensive backs with your top 40 picks. I mean, everybody's been criticizing the guy. I think he's valuable to at least keep in the room. Even if you don't start him, keep him in the room. He's been in the league a long time. Quinyon Mitchell can learn something from the guy. But you know how fans in Philly get when they don't like a player. They don't like a player. Are they going to run him out of town, or are the Eagles going to get rid of him?
I just keep telling myself he can't be any worse than what he was last year. I'm arrogant enough. I keep him around because you can never have too many corners. But after this year, sayonara.
Yeah, they got a big room, and I do think they have Vic Fangio this year, and I'm not the highest on his style of defense, but I will say I think he will know how to use James Bradbury to get the most out of James Bradbury for whatever is left of the player. I think Vic will get that out of him. So from that perspective, I would say at the least keep him on the roster.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I've said from the start, I think James would have a bounce back year with Vic. But now that they drafted a corner, I don't think he's going to be here. To your point of being, if you're a backup corner, you have to play special teams, and
Which he don't do.
he's not going to do, nor should he. And you have Kelly Ringo, who's a tremendous special teams player. Josh Job's a tremendous special teams player. How many corners are you going to keep?
You know what? Josh Job's going to be an interesting one because
Isaiah Rodgers might be your kickoff returner.
I keep trying to tell fans this. Can we temper the expectations on Isaiah Rodgers?
Well, now they have, because now they have Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So now Isaiah's who cares?
Yeah, when he first got reinstated, everybody was ready to start him and make him the next great thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was a rough week for me on social media because I kept trying to tell people, you guys do know we could have reapplied for reinstatement the day after the Super Bowl. No, it has to be this. I'm like, are you trying to tell me that I'm wrong?
It's funny because so many people, they speak with such certainty.
Conviction.
And conviction. And I'm like, I talked to Brian McCarthy. He not only is eligible for those people that don't know, he's the NFL's chief PR guy. And he's the one who handles all the questions and things like that. And he said, he's still under advisement. Still wouldn't believe it. No, you have to do that. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, same thing. I emailed the league, McCarthy, you could send him a text. I mean, he gets back to you. So I'm like, but they tell me I need to do research.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. You got to live with it. Part of the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Kerr, CBS. Make sure you follow Jeff on X, Twitter. Read him at CBS Sports, does a tremendous job covering the Phillies as well locally. Let's talk about the Tom Brady Netflix roast.
I didn't get to see it yet.
But
I saw some clips of it. I didn't watch it live, but I didn't
watch it live. But
I saw Nikki Glazer's clip. I saw that.
Nikki's phenomenal. For those who don't like comedy and are just understanding Nikki Glazer's the Tom Brady of roast, that's how I would describe it. She's the all-time best when it comes to roast. A couple Billy references. I think, Tom had a very negative thing to say about Billy fans that I'm sure they'll like. It's all good natured. It's all jokes.
I saw Berman's tweet. I guess Zach was watching it last night.
Bill Belichick got a lot of praise for his set. And there was a joke about Bill becoming the Eagles head coach next year, which people will take too seriously.
I'm buying it. I'm buying Bill Belichick to Philly.
I don't want that. I don't want that man anywhere near. Okay, you want my honest opinion on the Tom Brady roast? This is what happens when a franchise is irrelevant. They're not relevant anymore. Their glory year, the Patriot way was the Brady way. I'm telling you, the one thing I'm rooting for in life is Andy Reid to catch and pass Bill Belichick in Super Bowls and championships. That's what I'm rooting for.
Well, he's got a long way to go to do that.
Well, I will say that Jeffrey Lurie, it's funny because, Eagles fans hate the Patriots so much. They cheated, blah, blah, blah. Tom Brady wouldn't shake Nick Foles' hand, all that kind of stuff. Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman love Bill Belichick, and they love the Patriots organization, and they have tremendous respect for it. And they talked to Bill, as is now reported, but he'll be 73, 72. He'll be 73 in April of next year. Even if Nick Sirianni falls flat on his face and the Eagles are looking for a new head coach, where's the evidence that Jeffrey Lurie wants the big name? He goes the opposite direction. He wants the young unknown.
Yeah, they've never. The only time they go after the big name, it fell flat on their face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do say I wonder though, when Jeffrey Lurie looks at this roster of talent and sees the amount of great players, do you wonder what a guy like Bill Belichick can do? I do. I got to be honest. I do. I mean, I look at A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. I mean, it's in all people are calling
is Tom Brady coming back? That's what I want to know.
I doubt that, right? Jalen Hurts is.
We can start that rumor. Tom Brady to the Eagles.
Why don't we bring Adrian Pearson back while we're at there, John?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Everybody can help the Eagles. Every big team can help the Eagles. Every single one of them.
It's like Madden.
Yeah. Yeah, the big names are done for this season. Maybe until there's an injury. Then you'll have Justin Simmons. I don't want to get people excited. Jeff Kerr, good stuff as usual. Doing a tremendous job. And I forgot to mention the tryout players. Last year, do you remember the player? They signed one tryout player. Do you remember who that was? If you do, you are a true football aficionado.
You know what? I would have to think longer than this show. So go ahead, John.
Charleston Rambo.
That's right. It was Charleston. I always gave him the tryout guy.
Yeah, he was a tryout guy. And how meaningful was that? So if the Eagles, they're going to sign a tryout guy because you want to send that message of, hey, if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. But I wouldn't get too excited. I want to temper that.
You know what, John? This is why sometimes, like, you know how, and I'm going to be writing about this too, how Johnny Wilson, he is, he has no reason to lie to you, but about the whole wide receiver tight end thing. And maybe it's just me covering different sports, but I literally talked to Trey Turner Friday night, who said it'll be a couple days, maybe a week. And then you hear from other players. We'll probably go on the IL. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Yeah, it ended up being 6. So sometimes take everything you hear with a grain of salt.
Well, I can say the Eagles have no plans on moving him to tight end.
Well, then there you go. So,
but as I always say with that kind of stuff, they have no plans right now when there's 90 people on the roster. They had no plans of moving Nolan Smith, the all-ball linebacker, last year. Remember, that was a conversation. No plans.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in season, they had to do it because you're whittled down to 53 for a short period of time. And sometimes you have to go with the flow and you got to figure things out in the moments. But, Nick Sirianni and Howie they went on the record saying, no, he's a wide receiver, blah, blah, blah. Now, you saw him. He's a big dude, man.
He's a really big dude.
Like a tree out there. And he's got room on his frame to add weights if he wants to. So it could be a situation where he moves down the road or something like that. But they want to see him as a wide receiver first. And we'll see how it shakes out.
His body does move. He does move his body more like a wide receiver, I will say. When you watch some of his tape, he's very athletic. He does move well for his.
A lot of his games at Florida State, you're like, could he play tight end? I don't know. And someone even mentioned that to me. So like, someone sent me a clip. It actually wasn't a clip. It was like a half of a Florida State game on YouTube, and he said, "Watch this and tell me what you think." And I did, and I said, "I don't see tight end," but that's just me.
Well, Jeppin can't block anybody. It's ironic. I mean, he's not going to block, but as a wide receiver, he's a good blocker. So if he's out there blocking cornerbacks, he can use his will.
That was one thing I really liked what they did in this trade. And look, I know to me, everything after round 2 is their lottery tickets, but you kind of address depth at wide receiver, even if Smith and Wilson don't make the roster, which I think they will. But getting 2 wide receivers that late, I think, really helps them.
Well, there is still a huge drop off from AJ and Devontae, but doesn't there have to be?
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
you're paying them.
yeah. I mean, how many receivers, star receivers, can you have?
I like the 2 guys they drafted, but John, you've talked about how much they value having the speed guy. Part of me wonders why they didn't just draft the speed guy, even if you didn't know how great of a receiver he was going to be. If they value this, maybe there wasn't any left. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe there wasn't a guy there that checked.
I'm trying to think who was left.
I mean, they drafted 2 receivers. You have AJ, Devontae, and now you're bringing in guys to try out who are.
Maybe they figured they drafted guys like John Hightower that low, and it just didn't work out.
Well, John Hightower, he was actually taken in the 5th round. Quez Watkins was taken in the same draft in the 6th round.
Yeah.
So Quez contributed a lot more than John Hightower did.
And Jalen Reagor was taken in the 1st round of that.
By the way, that's one thing I wish we got to stop on social media too. A 6th round pick is not a bust. A 7th round pick is not a bust. To me, Quez Watkins is far from a bust. He's in his 5th year in the league.
I say it all the time. Quez Watkins is a unmitigated success as a 6th round pick.
Did anybody pick Quez up this year?
Pittsburgh did.
Pittsburgh, yeah.
Pittsburgh on him.
Andy Waddle.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy Weidl's just taking everybody the Eagles wanted.
Yeah, Jeff, before I let you go, I do want to ask you one question on the Philadelphia Phillies. Are they getting too hot too early in the season yet? I know they're red hot. They look good, but it's a streaky game. So are they too hot too early?
I don't believe that. To me, this is exactly what they preached to me in spring training. This is what they've been preaching all year. This is what got Bryce Harper red when I asked him if they were pressing, and he just looked at me and goes, "Come on, Jeff, man, 16 games." Well, since then, and it's funny now because every time I see him, he kind of smiles because they're 13 over 500. This is one of the best starts they've ever had. I mean, they can play 500 ball the rest of the year and win 89 games. I think or 88. I can't remember. Now.
That would be a disappointment.
It
would be an immense
11 to start here. Yeah.
It would be an immense disappointment. They did that.
That's a 100-win team. They got
a great start. Okay, this is the Phillies' drama right now. How can you take Spencer Turnbull out of the rotation because their rotation has been that good? Like everybody's complaining about Walker. Walker's been giving them solid starts for 6 innings, and their score they're 15-1. Or sorry, I think it's like 18-1 now.
I will never get used to it, Jeff. And I'm old, obviously. I will never get used to starting pitchers getting taken out after 5 in the 3rd, not giving anything up. I will never get used to it. I'm like, what are we doing?
This weekend was like, we're all like, okay, like this team is fun. We love talking to these guys, but something needs to get spiced up. Well, then Trey Turner got it. So. Yeah, now it's okay. Is Bryson's not going to play? Sure, they're going to move him over there. He hasn't really had a chance to field grounders there because the field's been covered in tarp. And
I think they're going to go Sosa to start, right? They're going to put Sosa in there.
They're going to put Sosa in. I think it's going to be the majority of Mundo Sosa, but they want to play Whit Merrifield. You pay him $8 million, and he's starting to hit the ball. So that Whit can play second. Whit has volunteered to play short. I don't think that's going to be an option. So it's going to be like Sosa. Stott mixed in there, and JT's going to be the 2 here. I mean, really, who's got to step up are the JT Realmutos, the Nick Castellanos of the world. Nick Castellanos is best. That's how you got to, not like you got to repeat Trey Turner's production here, but just certain guys got to step up. Even Bryce Harper, he's got to step up a little bit, and he did last night. So
yeah, big home run last night for Bryce, 3-run shot. So good stuff. Jeff Kerr, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate it as always.
Yep, you got it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, bud.
That's Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports. I want to remind everybody in the chat room to like the show, as it's the best thing you can do to help Birds 365 grow. Good stuff from Jeff Kerr. There are a couple things John and I will kick around. I want to get back into the Saquon Barkley talk and the Bill Belichick talk. I want to get John's opinion on that. I love it. I love the idea of Bill Belichick in Philly. I know it's unlikely, but I do like it.
Well, I'm not one to say he's not a great coach. I think people who think, that stupid argument of, but was it Tom Brady or Bill Belichick? It was both. But
it was both, right?
He's the greatest coach of all time. But he is. I'm also realistic. He's going to be 73 next April.
Yeah. So even if you do get him, how long are you going to have him for? I guess that's a
Exactly.
conversation. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. We'll kick all that around. Coming up next on Birds 365, and then hour number 2 coming up in about 13 minutes. Les Bowen from contributing now on PHLY and has lesbowensjawn.com. So stay tuned. We'll be with you on the other side on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody. A Monday edition of Birds 365 following the Eagles rookie camp. So it's moving quick. They get drafted last week, and they're in camp this week. For those that missed it, John did a great breakdown in hour number 1 to start the show off of what he took away from the rookie camp. Johnny Mac, two rookies, first two to sign their deals, first of the 9, 2 of them. Johnny Wilson signs first, and then Trevor Keegan. I know we kicked around last year. We were waiting for who were we waiting to sign last year?
It's usually yeah. I remember Landon Dickerson. He was really worried about Landon Dickerson. I'm like,
Right.
dude, don't worry about it. Everything's slotted. There's a little bit of second round picks tend to be the ones that take a little bit longer because there's a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to offset money, guaranteed money. As they continue to go down, they try to get farther and farther along with the draft to get fully guaranteed deals. So there's a little bit, but everything is slotted. And don't even worry about rookie picks signing because they're going to sign. There's
What
no
is just real quick for the sake of the knowledge and for the listening audience, what is debated in a rookie contract? I know basically the money is preset before you even go into the draft. Is it all just guarantees, signing bonuses, stuff like that?
The biggest issues tend to be, and I put that in quotations because they're not large issues, but it tends to be timing of the bonuses, and obviously a lot of teams want to put that off, and obviously people want their money in a more immediate fashion. Typically, as I said, there's some offset language arguments, which basically means if you bail and we cut you, and somebody else signs you, then there's got to be an offset, and they're paying, we're not paying, that kind of thing. So those are the two biggest issues, the timing and offset language. I compare it to old married couples who don't have anything to argue about, so they make up stuff to argue about. And as an agent, you gotta, sometimes you gotta pretend you're, more worth than what you are.
Gotta show your value, right?
Yeah. And in the case of it, they can show their value, but do it in other areas, marketing, things like that. And obviously, once you get into second contracts, it becomes a much bigger issue. I don't recommend players negotiate themselves, but it's not nearly as hard as it once was. And everything is slotted from a financial perspective. So most of the issues you will see, as I said, it will take longer typically for some of the second round picks to sign because they're trying to force the fully guaranteed money as down the board as much as possible, and incrementally it gets larger year after year.
Yep. So 2 rookies now signed under contract. We will keep you updated on Birds 365 about when each of those signed. So Johnny Wilson signs his first to ink his deal, and then Trevor Keegan signs as well. John, I want to ask a question on Saquon Barkley. We mentioned it with Jeff Kerr, how Howie Roseman says, he uses the zig when everyone is zagging phrase, brings in a running back. It's kind of against what the Eagles team building philosophy in recent years. I know you're not too high on the player, but you do say the Eagles tend to make sound decisions. If the player can live up to the hype, do you see the logic in the decision? I will say I struggle at times to see it because there's only one football. They're not a huge, as good as their offensive line is, they don't use the running back out of the backfield in many other ways. So from that perspective, it's a little confusing to me. But if the player lives up to the hype, do you like the decision for Howie to zig when everyone else is zagging?
No, but I will take issue with, and that's one of the few I say the Eagles generally make decisions that I understand and I agree with. This is not one of them. And it's not because of the player. You said I'm not as high on the player. No, he's talented. I'm not saying he's not talented. They are saying, and they have said, he's the closest thing to Christian McCaffrey, who was sort of their white whale of this generation. They weren't able to get him.
That was
in the
one
draft.
guy they were willing to draft, apparently, right in the top 10.
And they see the presence that he gave to the San Francisco offense, and that's not me. That's them. If that's what you're expecting, if that's what people are expecting, you're going to be disappointed. That doesn't mean Saquon Barkley's better than Miles Sanders, who's pretty good when he was here. Certainly that last season when he rushed for 1,269 yards. He's better than DeAndre Swift, who also made the Pro Bowl and was 1,000
and rushed for over 1,000 yards too. This is where I wonder, how much more value are you going to get? I don't know.
And maybe the biggest value is he's a better pass protector, and he can help you in that phase of the game. But that's not what people are saying. Oh, he can pick up a blitz better than guys who can't pick up a blitz. They're comparing him to Christian McCaffrey, not me. I think that's ludicrous. If that's the expectation, no, they're wrong. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
It's interesting.
There's been no evidence that even during this rookie year, which was spectacular, there's been no evidence that he's a Christian McCaffrey-like presence in an offense. He's a good receiver for a running back. That's what it's all about. Let's be honest. Because Christian's not even that good of a pass protector. He's a better pass protector than Christian McCaffrey. This is all about the receiving game and impact on the receiving game. That's what it's about.
So are they putting the pressure on Kellen Moore to expand that part of Jalen Hurts' game? I mean, he's expanded his game in other areas.
I mean, there's
I'm not
tremendous.
Sit here and say he'll never be able to throw to the running backs. I think that would be foolish to say. We haven't seen it to this point, but maybe when you add a guy like Saquon Barkley and you bring in a pass-aggressive offensive coordinator like Kellen Moore, maybe you'll see that this year.
Yeah, I doubt it, but yeah, they put tremendous pressure, and that's not Saquon's fault either. That's more Jalen Hurts because he just, as we've talked about ad nauseum on the show, he just doesn't do it. He doesn't have to do it. He's not a dump-off guy. And you might want to protect him from a health standpoint and try to drill it into his head. Just dump it off, just dump it off, just dump it off. And maybe that's a natural evolution as he gets older as well. But I don't think it's his default setting as a player. And then you start talking about actual routes down the field. And that's where the difference, that they're not even close. They're not. And I said this about Bijan Robinson last year as well. Well, he'll be like McCaffrey. No, he won't. And he wasn't. I say it all the time. Once in a generation means once in a generation. Doesn't mean twice. Doesn't mean 3 times. Doesn't mean 4 times. Christian McCaffrey runs, and I said it, coming out of college, coming out of Stanford, people saying he ran better routes than the receivers coming out of college. Those guys are good receivers for running backs, which is very valuable. But if you're expecting them to have the similar impact as a guy who's on a different tier, then you're going to be disappointed. That's my point. So the Eagles are saying it. If that's their expectation, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on Kellen Moore this year. I just don't. He's coming in with an offense that is stacked to the tills. Everybody's making big money. Nobody hasn't been paid yet. You got the running back, you got the receivers, you got the quarterback, you got the offensive line. I mean, he better make hay quick, or else there's going to be another year of firings next year if he can't make it work.
Well, he's got tremendous pressure. I mean, last year the offense was thought to be this terrible, disastrous unit, and they were number 8 in total offense. They were number 3 in third down offense. They were number 1
now they did get
in
stale
fourth down
at the end of the
offense.
year, but overall,
Yeah,
yes.
that's the word Nick Sirianni said. That's fine, but the bottom line is when you compare them against the rest of the league, they were 8th, and 8th wasn't good enough, and that situational football wasn't good enough. So kind of hard. Should they be better than 8th? Yes. But that's, going into it, you better not be worse than number 8,
Right.
which is pretty good.
And it's harder to go from 8th to top 5 versus Fangio. The expectations are lighter because if they're a top 15 defense,
they're trying to go from
greatly.
30 to,
Right.
mid-range 15, which I think he'll be able to do pretty easily, to be honest. Because I saw Brian Flores do it last year. Just probably with less talent than Vic has. Not probably, definitely. So I expect a big improvement on defense. Offensively, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on everybody because everybody thinks this is the best offense in football, and the expectations are through the roof. They really are. So everybody's got pressure on them.
Now, I'd say the coaches have pressure because I got news for you. This offense could suck. They're not firing Jalen Hurts.
They're not going to suck offensively. That's not possible. But they have too much talent. They're not going to suck. But
yeah,
again,
the idea is though that only one portion of it is fighting for their job. The coaches are, the players are not.
So, well, that's always, that's always,
We'll talk about it all coming up next with Les Bowen, who's in the green room waiting for us to join us. So Les Bowen coming up next. Don't forget to like the show, everybody, as it's the number one thing you can do to help Birds 365 grow. And we appreciate it. We had two great guests, Les Bowen coming up next, and we had Jeff Kerr in hour one. So don't forget to like the show. And coming up next, Les Bowen on the other side of the break.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Monday's edition of Birds 365. We are joined now by Les Bowen, who wrote about the Eagles for a long time with the Philadelphia Inquirer, now contributing on PHLY Sports and writing on LesBowensJohn.com. Les, welcome to the show, man.
Great to be here, Zander. How you doing, John?
Good, Les. Good to see you, as always. Rookie camp. How exciting are you? How exciting have rookie camps been for you over the years?
You know, it's an interesting time because you only have 30, 40 people on the field, so they can't really do a lot of stuff. And I thought Nick made a very good point Friday when he talked to you guys about, these guys they're not in football shape. They've been training for the combine and stuff like that. So you can't really you're going to hurt them if you go out there and try to play football or something. So, and you don't have veterans around, so you can't really install things. It's really just a chance for people to get to know one another, get familiar with the facility, with the coaches, with getting, the structure of the day and stuff like that. And it's not a tremendously vital time of year, I guess, but it's in the old days, there used to be intrigue over when this guy would sign or that guy would sign, but now that's all.
Yeah. We were just talking about that. It's all slotted. Still people get it. A couple of years ago, Landon Dickerson didn't sign till right before camp, and they're all worried. What's going on? I said, don't worry. I kept telling Jody, don't worry about it. It's fine. And he came in a couple of days before camp. But I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't think about that, Les. And that's why I like having you on. When Nick talking about these guys aren't ready to play football. I thought, one of the pre-draft stories, one of the more interesting pre-draft stories to me was Marvin Harrison Jr., who didn't want to go through all this rigmarole. And he's like, I'm training for football. And I thought, why don't more people train for football instead of track? Go ahead.
I guess you'd have to really do a deep dive into how much the teams value the 40 time and the number of reps at this and that. If they don't really care, then everybody should do what Marvin Harrison does. But Marvin Harrison knew he was going to be a top 5.
Yeah, right. I think that's what
easy for him.
If you're top 5 pick.
So
I have asked scouts over the years, Les. I said, as guys, because you have all these training facilities all over the country that specifically train these guys for these drills. And I say, are they as valuable? If, back in the day when the combine first started, your buddy Paul Domowitch, as we always talk to, he was like at the first one. And guys would just show up and they weren't training for it. So you got a better feel for who the really great athletes were. Yeah. Now that they're training for it, it's just like a job interview from the perspective of all the agents get these guys and say, they're going to ask you this, and they're prepared for it.
Yeah.
Which you can say is a good thing, but is it? Because
we're like 25 years post McMullen now, I guess. And
you don't get
everybody
the
knows everything
results
about what to do here. I don't know. It's the thing that you were just saying that kind of resonated with me is the other part of it is when you talk to a guy in his second year in the NFL, who's starting his second year, you always get this, well, last year I didn't really have a great offseason because I was preparing for the draft and doing all these interviews and trying to lose weight so I could run faster and stuff like that. So it's like it's a disrupted offseason for them. Yeah. And they want to have a different kind of offseason, the next year. And it just seems like you're right that, that maybe they should look at how this is done. Are these rookies really coming in, ready to hit the ground running, or is it a distraction to them really to go through this process?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it does change over the next couple of years. You're starting to see more players hold out. I mean, I agree. If you're a top 5 pick, you have different options than if you're a day 3 pick. But Les, we didn't have a chance to talk to you since the draft. Did anything stand out to you that the Eagles did? I know it's tough to grade the players. They haven't, you can't grade a player yet, but what'd you make of the Eagles' thought process and decision-making during the NFL draft?
Well, I was very impressed, and I also thought they were very lucky with the 2 defensive backs. The luck is involved in having the 6 quarterbacks go in the first 12 selections.
14 offensive players. 14 offensive players. Yeah.
I think it was smart of Howie to keep his powder dry and sit there and wait for the draft to come to him. There was a risk involved in that, but it worked out beautifully. And no one would have predicted that before the draft. It wasn't like when you got Quinyon Mitchell, it wasn't like when you got Andre Dillard, where you got a guy that was supposed to go much earlier, but it was just that one guy that it turned out other teams had questions about him that you didn't know enough to raise. This is a different situation. The whole defensive half of the draft slid down and, all the corners were there. I think that puts a little bit of pressure on them. And I think Howie kind of gave a nod to that in his remarks. They had their pick of any corner.
Yeah.
And Quinion Mitchell is the consensus, top corner, but some people like Terry and Arnold better.
Yeah.
And if any of these guys ends up being better than Quinion Mitchell, you can now criticize the Eagles for not, what if Nate Wiggins ends up being the best one? It's they had their pick, so this guy better be the best corner of a very good corner class, or there will be people who will point that out. But getting both those guys, knowing exactly when to, I'll give Howie credit, knowing exactly when he had to trade up to 40 to get DeJean, that was smart. And it was an incredible haul just from those two. That the secondary was ground zero last year for me of the whole implosion and all their problems. Obviously, there were other issues that arose, but that was really if you wanted to fix one thing, that's the one thing.
Right.
That's the big hole in the boat right there. So to get two guys of that caliber, going forward, it was long overdue for one thing. One point that I made and something I wrote was that you make choices in every draft. And one of the choices here was to not get Lane Johnson's successor in the first couple rounds of this draft. It was to get that secondary fixed. And you can't quarrel with that choice, but it's still a choice.
Yep.
And if Lane Johnson, God forbid, tears his ACL game week 3, and we'll see how Mekhi Becton looks.
Yeah. You saw that sense of urgency, though, Les, because, Howie admitted he was very honest and when he was asked, because this was considered a very deep offensive line draft at the top.
At the top.
Not only on the first round, but day 2, there were 24 different offensive linemen selected, and the Eagles were 0-24. Now, if you would have told me that, I would have said no way.
They traded 50 and 53, to get up.
And I think that's where they were going to go along.
Like I said, you make choices. You got Cooper DeJean, which was everybody agrees is an incredible value, but you did not get an offensive tackle.
Yep.
And I want to get to Cooper in a second, but before I want to say, did the Mekhi Becton signing so immediate after the draft, did that flash a sense of urgency to you that, all right, we got to do something on the offensive line? And he's still young. You get him with Stoutland. He evidently wants to be here. He's got tremendous talent. But I
don't know how Stoutland is at keeping guys from getting hurt, though.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Becton has had an incredible litany of injuries, which has been part of his story.
He did play most of last year. But, and he wasn't great, but I think it's a decent signing. He's only 25.
Oh yeah. I think, in answer to your question, I think Howie might have had this in his back pocket.
Yeah.
Thinking he might not get an offensive tackle. And been, okay, let's talk Monday if things go a certain way. I heard people talking, other reporters talking during the draft about this, about the possibility that you might have to go for somebody like this. So,
and that's what Howie's good at. Howie, to his credit, he's good at contingencies, man. Yeah. He's got, if one thing doesn't go, he's got another thing in the pipe.
Offensive tackle isn't like running back. It's not like there's 30 of them sitting out there that you can just grab one. Yeah, that was the only guy on the market that really, could even possibly move the needle. So it was astute of him to do that. And we'll see how it all works out. But they're still not depth-wise where they were last year at offensive line. That's for sure.
No. With Cooper, Did you see the Eagles unscripted thing with that they kind of showed their behind the scenes streaming show that they put on eagles.com? They showed the war room, the trade up.
Yes.
They were very concerned that the Rams were trading up at 39 to get Cooper DeJean. But I want to get your thoughts. Jeffrey Lurie looked pretty involved, Les.
Yeah,
For a guy who's only been involved with 3 picks over the years.
Yeah, what a
pretty
bunch
involved.
Of hooey that is.
Yeah.
Very involved. I think one of the reasons for Howie's success is that Howie handles Jeffrey very, very well. Keeps him, here's why we're doing this. Here's what we're going to do now. Here's what I think. It's not there are a lot of GMs that would really, you'd sense tension or at least resentment at having the guy sit there and interject himself like that. And that was a big factor in the early years of the Lurie regime with other GMs that they had.
Well, I kind of mentioned earlier in the show, Les, could you imagine a young GM with that kind of overbearing presence? Eagles fans should thank their lucky stars that Howie has that experience to sort of manage the owner, I think. Is that from
that's a
perspective?
Good point. I hadn't thought about it, but you're exactly right. Yeah, that and that's why one of the many reasons. I mean, one reason is he does a good job overall, but that's one of the reasons why Howie is so entrenched in that position. And it's hard to see him ever moving out of here. Is that relationship now? The one thing that will change eventually before Howie gets old is that Jeffrey will, at some point, step back, and it'll be his son, Julian, that will be sitting there, and that'll be an interesting thing for Howie to negotiate at that point.
Yeah, probably won't have the same type of relationship with Julian that he does with Jeffrey. So we'll see how that plays out. Les, we talked about it. They went 2 defensive backs. Now they have quite a crowded room. Now I don't know if the talent is great, but boy, they got a lot of players in that room.
They sure do.
Do you think James Bradbury is on the outs? Is that something you see happening post June 1?
Yeah, it has to. I mean, if you look at the depth chart, there's no way they can go forward. If they don't get rid of Bradbury, they'll be getting rid of somebody that they thought was pretty talented last year. Some of these guys like Ricks or Ringo or somebody like that they like, they're not going to do that. I don't think. At the very least, you'd have to expose one or two of those guys to try to get them on the practice squad or something. I just don't see that. I think Bradbury's got to be gone. I don't think you're going to get anybody to trade for him. I think you're just going to release him post June 1st and eat whatever you got to eat. But it's going to be a very different room, and I'm really fascinated by how it might fit together. I believe they said DeJean will start out on the outside.
They you know how that was. They scouted him as a cornerback, as an outside cornerback, which makes sense because he played the most there at Iowa, but also played what they called the cash position as well. That's from the scouting perspective. But when the coaches get him and it whittles down to 53, things can change quickly. So he does have a lot of versatility. He can play all over the place. I don't expect Malcolm Jenkins right away, but it's a nice little
well, it took Malcolm Jenkins a while to be Malcolm. Malcolm Jenkins won a Super Bowl his rookie year as a corner for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, he was drafted.
But, he wasn't one of their best players. He was okay, but it didn't happen right away. Didn't happen right away for Brian Dawkins even with the Eagles, when he came aboard. So we'll see how it all fits together. One vital element of all this for me, and I bring it up every time I'm doing a podcast with anybody, is Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to see him?
Would be. I did see him. Les. He was way on the other side of the field. It's ridiculous.
They haven't had a press conference with either of these coordinators that they hired in January.
I'm predicting
and it's
May
just like
22nd.
We don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. We don't have to explain anything to anybody.
Well, last year I could I was mentioning this last year. They're coming off the Super Bowl. Yeah, so you have a short off season. You have young coordinators that you want to, manage, so to speak. All right, I'll buy it a little bit. I still don't agree with it, but I can buy it a little bit. This year, Vic's been doing it for 100 years. Kellen Moore's a veteran. What are you afraid of? They can handle a press conference in their sleep.
Yeah.
I think it's silly, but that's where we are.
Yeah, well, the other difference is the other two guys went to the Super Bowl and weren't fired. They were hired away. The last two guys were fired after a catastrophic collapse. So I think
maybe they want to get Vic to not say anything that will affect the tampering down the road, but maybe that's
I think they don't want. There's going to be, all the questions are going to be about what's going to be different. How are you going to change this defense? How is Kellen Moore going to change this offense? And they're just so paranoid about anybody knowing anything.
Oh yeah, competitive advantage. Yeah,
we might be running the single wing. Who knows?
There's not enough tape on Kellen Moore to know what he likes to do.
Right? Yeah, sure. It's silly, and it makes the reporter's job a lot harder because people. You go into the draft having no idea, like the edge rusher that they drafted in the 3rd round. That must be a Fangio pick.
He definitely likes him. But, my thing about that is how many coordinators have we had just in the Nick Sirianni era?
Yeah,
now?
I mean, we've had 5 defensive coordinators in 4 years.
It's like if you start drafting people solely for Vic likes him or Kellen likes him, you could argue if the Eagles don't have a good year and the expectations are high that Nick Sirianni's out of here, and all of a sudden you got a new coach who wants new coordinators. And
excellent point.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful with drafting guys.
If you remember, John, Fletcher Cox was. Jim Washburn was he really wanted Fletcher Cox.
Yeah.
Now, thank heaven that ended up being Fletcher Cox ends up his 2nd year playing in a 3-4, which was not what he was drafted to do at all. Jim Washburn got fired midway or 2/3 of the way through Fletcher Cox's rookie year.
Yeah, and then then Bill Davis. Well, Kelsey said there's 2 players he played with that could play in any system, any scheme, any philosophy, and they'd be successful. And he said one was Jason Peters and one was Fletcher Cox, and that's it.
But they were very fortunate that was the guy, that he was that guy, that he could do anything because they drafted him because Jim Washburn was.
And Fletcher didn't like when they switched from Jim. Everybody, all defensive linemen love playing for Jim Schwartz. Love it, love it, love it. And when they switched to the Fangio-like scheme with Jonathan Gannon, he didn't like that at first, but he could play it.
And
at least Fletcher, though, Fletcher wasn't drafted as a developmental player. I mean, we're talking about Jalen Hunt, that's the difference, though. You get a new coordinator, and now you got a guy on the roster that's a developmental piece.
Yeah.
Next coach might not want to deal with that. I don't.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Zander, because that would be one of my quibbles with the draft. I'm not like some people. I'm not, oh my God, they had the most wonderful draft ever, and this will be, they'll be the best team in the league for the next 20 years. I don't like a project in the 3rd round. I understand about this guy's measurables and how, what his ceiling could possibly be. That's intriguing. It would be a lot more intriguing in the 5th or 6th round than it was to me in the 3rd round. They've done this before, and I've seen it not work. Davion Taylor, Curtis Marsh, the 3rd round corner who was a converted running back. They love these, this guy could be such and such, a couple of years ago, he was a backup safety at Cornell. So,
that's awesome, by the way. He goes from 195 to 252, whatever he is.
Yeah.
That's a late spurt. But, he's this big, rangy guy. I will say this, Les, he looks like an edge rusher. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, he might be a great player, but I'm just saying, 3rd round.
Yeah.
like Roman.
No,
Wilson,
I'm with you. I've talked about it a lot. Peyton Wilson was there. And he
yeah,
went, I think, four picks later to Pittsburgh and Andy Weidel, which I thought was interesting because for two reasons. One, Bradley's out there, Dr. James Bradley. So UPMC, that's one of the go-to sort of sports medical facilities in the country. And if Pittsburgh cleared him, that means something to me.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking about Peyton Wilson. So from a medical standpoint, I don't know. And he'd be a day one starter for the Eagles at linebacker, a position of need for a contender. That's one to keep an eye on. I don't necessarily like that decision. And it seems like, if Andy's taking him, Andy knows how the Eagles do business.
Yeah. He's a guy that probably would have fit with the Eagles philosophy as well. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and I think the other part of the Jalix Hunt pick is former safety. He can drop in coverage. That also points to being a Vic Fangio guy.
Right.
Yeah, flat defender. Yeah.
If only we could hear from Vic Fangio to elaborate on that. But
that's going to drive people. That's going to drive people insane. Vic drive that they love dropping those flat defenders, those edge rushers. Yeah.
Well, there's some guys that can really do that, and it works great, but it's weird that Hassan Reddick couldn't do that, having been drafted by the Cardinals to be a real linebacker, not a pass rush linebacker, but a linebacker. They wasted a couple years of his career.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the reasons Hassan Reddick is out of here, one of the reasons is he's 30 years old and he just kind of got going as an edge rusher about 4 years ago. Hassan Reddick can't play in coverage at all. And, that's, unfortunately, that made him, along with some other things, a bad fit here. But, it's going to be real interesting to see what Fangio does and how the pieces fit together that they have, because they didn't change everybody. You can't go out and get a whole new defense. So some people are going to be doing things that maybe they weren't doing previously.
At Les Bowen, make sure you follow Les on X, Twitter. Does a tremendous job writing for PHLY. So Anthony Gargano doing a good job getting Les Bowen back. Check him out there. Les Bowen's John on his own personal website as well. I guess all I did, Howie was on, has been doing the national rounds, taking his flowers. Everybody loves Howie. So he was on Adam Shine's show and he said, he was talking about Saquon Barkley, and he gave the old zigzagging quote that he's done a number of times. Sometimes when everybody's zigging, you want to zag. And he used that for Saquon Barkley. Everybody's devalued the position so much that maybe it's time to go the other way. Here's not if you agree, but the levels to that. I think Howie was a main contributor of everybody devaluing the position. Did he just okey doke everybody and say, all right, don't value this position, everybody. And then I'm going to shift gears and take one of the guys who can play. Is he that far ahead of the game?
Very good. Yeah. That's, but he would not have drafted Saquon Barkley second overall.
No, that he would not have done. Yes.
Never in a million years.
No.
And, paying him money is one thing, drafting him when you needed a quarterback is something else. But there's a certain, I understand that it's all about that Moneyball idea of, undervalued assets and things like that, things that people aren't investing in. There's a certain, I still say they might be reviving the throw to the running back part of the offense with Saquon Barkley.
They paid him all that money. I mean,
I'm not sure he's going to be just handing that. Jalen's going to hand off to him 20 times a game.
Yeah.
Maybe they see this as a way to also get their running game less dependent on Jalen Hurts, which is probably a good thing. That Super Bowl year, their running stats were incredible, but if you took away Jalen Hurts, they weren't quite as. I mean, that was really a big part of their running attack, and I think we've seen from Jalen that it can't just disappear because he's not comfortable playing a style that doesn't involve him running at all. But I do think you've got to get away from those games where he's in double digits in carries, and this is one way to do that.
Yeah, good stuff, Les. Thanks for joining the show today. Pretty good breakdown of all the draft. It'll be interesting to see. An early prediction, I think Howie will be using the same zig when everyone else is zagging quote next year when he finally addresses the linebacker position. But we'll see if he does that.
Still waiting
Les,
on
thanks for
that one.
joining.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. It's great being with you guys.
Thank you, Les.
Thanks, Les.
Appreciate
it, bud.
There's Les Bowen. Make sure you follow Les Bowen on Twitter at Les Bowen and read his work on PHLY, where he's contributing now, and LesBowensJohn.com. So pretty good stuff from Les. I want to remind all of our listening audience, over 670 watching across JAKIB platforms and over 400 on YouTube. Make sure you guys like the show on YouTube, as it's the number one thing you can do to help grow our show. So we appreciate that very much. I don't have a number of what we're at right now, but I'd like to get them north of 100 by the end of the live show. So if you guys could do that for us, that would be great. Johnny Mac and I will come back coming up after the break, and we'll put a wrap on this Monday edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody. Wrapping up a Monday edition of Birds 365 following the rookie camp week. Johnny Mac, any final takeaways from you that you learned from rookie camp? Anything that stood out to you in your brief look at the rookies and what you saw from rookie camp? Anything that we missed that you want to get in here that you took away from rookie camp?
Well, yeah, I should have brought up. Got to see Vic on the far field for the first time. Kellen Moore running drills for the offense, such as they were. The quarterback, as I mentioned, was Blake Stenstrom from Princeton. So obviously, 40, I think 41 was the number of players there. So, skeleton crew, so to speak, most of them tryout players. But it's good to see the first looks, first glimpses of rookie players in their Eagles sort of accoutrement, obviously not in anything or pads of that nature. So can't take away much other than some of those intangible things I opened the show with. AJ Brown being out there, Jordan Mailata being around, attending meetings. Positive first step, I would say, for that mentality off season, which Howie Roseman described it as. We'll see if it works.
Yep, we'll see what it. We'll see what it. How it all plays out. I did see the Eagles putting out some social media footage of Jalen and Saquon Barkley squatting. So everybody's in the weight room gearing up for the 24 season. So we'll see how it all plays out. I do want to thank our listening audience today as we're up over 130 likes during the live show. So great stuff from everybody listening. We appreciate it. There's Joey B checking in. Joey B says F1 was the worst 10K he ever spent. He must have went to Miami this year. I was actually at the inaugural Miami race, and Joey B, I had the time of my life. I loved it. There was fast cars going by and people walking around. I enjoyed it. So sorry you didn't have a good experience, but we appreciate you checking in on Birds 365 and James and SMD Eagles, Daz, all of our loyal watchers. We do appreciate you guys being here today. Johnny Mac, until tomorrow, is there anything on the agenda for the Eagles today? Are you going down to NovaCare at all?
No, nothing official till the next phase of OTAs, which will be later this month. Where are we? May 6th, May 20th, I believe, May 22nd, May 23rd. So that's what we're talking about. Back, you'll see some weight room stuff, conditioning, all that kind of stuff. But then OTAs, then minicamp, mandatory minicamp, which will certainly be interesting. That'll be a big deal because that'll be the first one of the Nick Sirianni era. Mandatory minicamp.
Mandatory minicamp, the first one, as Johnny Mac mentioned. So we'll be here on Birds 365 to break it all down for you guys. We appreciate your viewership as always. Johnny Mac, until tomorrow, brother.
Thanks, Zander.
All right, see you next time, everybody.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.